God put a bus in his path so that we could have this conversation here together.
If you can find where you retire in the Bible, let me know. His accident turned into God influencing my life so much more than I ever thought was possible. Always an opportunity for Christ to show up in a law enforcement officer's life and spread that why he's doing what he's doing. It doesn't mean he has to be soft by any means. It doesn't mean he can't do his job and do it properly. I picture Christians as lions as much as I do lambs, and they are leaders, they are shepherds, they are taking care of their flock, and that flock starts with their wife and kids, and then it goes to their community, and a strong brotherhood of people who don't influence you in the wrong way, but you influencing them in the right way.
Marcus Neville, this has been a long time coming, but here we are. We're finally on the podcast together. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on here.
So you're in Gainesville, which is just north of Atlanta. I know in your heart, you're a dog, and you love the dogs.
Right.
That's a big part of you. But really, what joins you and I is we get to lead in the master's program. And a guy that influenced both of us is Phil Brown, who's already gone on to be with the Lord, but he had a big impact on you and I. So, Marcus, would you tell a little bit of your story of how you bumped into Phil and what God used Phil to do in your life?
Absolutely. Without diving too much into the overall scholarship program and Warriors portion, starting from me getting to meet Phil Brown, he was the director and overseeing the portion that had all the scholarships, working with veterans. And then Phil, working with Bob Shank and you, made the decision, let's take that and not just do it for veterans. Let's begin to involve law enforcement, the professionals that are out there shortly after the national movement against law enforcement, and let's defund police, etc. And he thought to himself, why wouldn't we include them? Why wouldn't we, let's pay it forward and bring the law enforcement community in here and for them and to help them and mentor them. But more so in my mind, when he came to me with it, is let me take these skills that we look at, and we can talk more about margin and focus and balance and taking that and actually putting in our lives, and now passing that to the young people that we oversee, because you're always looking for supervisors and leaders and people in high up places to be able to be a bigger influence on more people. Take
Mm,
those habits and those traits and make it so they look desirable, and I want that in my life.
yeah.
So Phil, as he began the law enforcement portion back in 2020, happened to have moved to Gainesville, was here with us in a local church where I go to church at Riverbend Baptist. And while he's there, he starts looking for people in North Georgia and across the country to join the first class that will have law enforcement and veterans from the military together. As he did that, he got one or two other people in our church, a couple from different counties around me, a couple police chiefs, a couple high-ranking people at our sheriff's office. And then he approached me and just wanted to have breakfast. So as he talked to me, he said, "Hey, let's go have a conversation. I've got something I'd like to talk to you about." I said, "That sounds great, Phil. I'd love to get to know you more." And that morning, for some reason, uh, he was driving and had an accident. And we all know the reason afterwards, because it kind of brought us together in a unique and quick way. But he had a vehicle accident where unfortunately he ran into a bus, and he was explaining to me, "Hey, I've had a vehicle accident. We'll have to reschedule." I said, "Phil, it's not a problem at all. I hope you're okay. If you need something, let me know." And as I hung up, I kind of felt like I needed to go check on him, and we lived near each other. There's only one or two ways to go to the restaurant. So I drove and I found him, and he was injured, and they were telling him he didn't need to go to the hospital. He basically had a huge hematoma, and it was not doing well, and he was in some pain. I said, "Well, hey, they'll be done with you in about 10 minutes. I'll drive you there." So when we got there, we got in the back, and not that I was being dishonest, but they came to me and said, "Hey, listen, your dad's going to be okay, but we're going to have him in the back for a little bit." And it was right when COVID was starting, and you couldn't be back there unless you were family. So I said, "Well, I hope he's going to be okay." And I got to stay in the room with him until Jan, his wife, got there. Um, and as I sat there with him and him in pain, he said, "Marcus, can you hand me my phone?" I said, "Absolutely." I figured he's gonna get a hold of Jan. Instead, he went to a short 7, 8-minute video of the master's program promo that you guys had made years earlier. He says, Take a look at this, take a look at this." So I watched it, and as I tell other people, when I walk through what the master's program can do for them, how it can put a lot more emphasis on what God's doing in their lives, create that margin where now they're freed up and can do more for Christ. Some people are, "Yeah, that sounds interesting." Some people pray about it for months. Some people do it 2 years later. I was sold kind of instantly. I said, "Phil, this is absolutely for me. I would love to do this." And basically, his accident turned into God influencing my life so much more than I ever thought was possible. It gave me the opportunity to kind of walk closer to him, at the same time taking things I've learned my entire life and refreshing them, putting them in great golden nuggets, and then be able to move them forward to be able to spread the gospel, influence other people. One of the biggest things he brought to me at the very beginning was, you never retire. If you can find where you retire in the Bible, let me know. We'll walk through it together. But it's not there. We're always going to be working. We're always going to be serving God. And I had so many friends who get to a place in their life where they kind of plateau and they're going to retire, whether it's 55, 60, 65, 70, and they have nothing to do. One of the big issues in law enforcement is it's kind of known that when you retire, you kind of don't make it much longer. You've always got to have a purpose. Well, as Christians, we're always going to have a purpose. As Christians, we're always going to be serving moving forward. And that comes to the forefront through the master's program. So he was able to bring that to me and share that gift with me. And now, through him talking with Bob and then you guys made the offer for me to take his spot. So now I was able to come along and work beside him for a year to a year and a half before he moved on to another ministry, and I took over the master's program scholarship portion for veterans and law enforcement. So it was just a great opportunity that Christ put in my path, and a bus in his, and it brought us together.
Yeah, God put a bus in his path so that we could have this conversation here together. Phil Brown, just to give quick context, was an amazing man. I mean, I can see Phil always working. It doesn't matter if he was in the hospital or not. He's gonna get his phone out, show you a video, and be calling people. He was just a relational animal, always going after, because he saw the opportunity to be able to see veterans and police officers to be able to live as leaders. What a platform that military veterans and police officers have to be able to influence. But often, Marcus, I think our challenge is helping people to move from "I'm just a" to something else.
Man,
And as soon as I limit myself with a just a mindset, then I'll, sort of give up on, well, this is as much as can be.
mhm.
Now you're getting to do that. You're getting to coach people and encourage them in this process. Do you have a favorite story of somebody that you've worked with in the past or seen come through the program that, as a result of their platform and being police leadership or military veteran leadership, that was special, where you just saw God doing creating fruit from them?
Absolutely, and there's 2 different short stories, that way I don't go on and kill our time and not bring something to the table. The first one is a local police chief who was a buddy of mine, and he joined the same class I was in, and as we're going through, one of the common problems, and luckily I had somebody who was my buddy, that we could work through what this looks like so I could share it with others beforehand, and became crucial as I talk to other officers while they're going through the program. They get caught up in that brotherhood syndrome where, no, law enforcement is my calling. It, I understand. We're not trying to say it's not. And we're not literally trying to take you and put you in ministry. We're trying to keep you in the marketplace and make you more valuable and useful in everything that you're doing. We're not trying to pluck you and have you in a seminary and now you're leading a church. We want you in that pew listening to your pastor and taking that time. And then also you're at church every single day, everywhere you're at, always. So taking that and instilling it becomes important. Well, he got stuck on, I don't see how this is for me. It looks like it's for businessmen. It looks like it's for X and Y and not really, I don't understand what they're saying. I said, listen, the reality is you want to take this and put every bit of it in your life. You want those date nights and intentional and focus on your family and your wife. And you want to make sure your four walls are balanced, your mind, body, soul, and spirit. When you get those, you can't pour out unless that's healthy. So for you, understanding that I have my professional calling, now I'm taking my ministry and kingdom calling, and I'm allowing it to overflow into my marketplace job. I'm allowing, as a police chief of a town that has 75,000 people, you're essential to what happens in our community. Now taking those Christian principles, watching Peter and Paul and how they led and taking their principles literally from the Bible and God's word to us on our instruction book, and then instilling it in how you lead your men is crucial. He came up with his ministry that he wanted to try to do, as we look toward giving them $100 and allowing them to go out and, okay, how can I? What's my kingdom calling going to be? He fishes a lot and he loves to go fishing. He loves to get on the lake. He likes to go to Florida and do things. And he was going to take teenagers at risk, get them on the boat for fishing, and introduce the gospel to them.
That's
He goes,
awesome.
I'm going to do it when I retire. And he's younger. He's 55-ish, 40, 50, 54, 55. I said, you still got a couple years left in you. You need to start now and just, a couple weekends a year or more, however much you can do. Don't think it's something you got to wait till you retire. Your Christian walk is every single day, always. Uh, and you're trying to marry those two together. And so trying to figure out the best way to do that is awesome. And you need to make sure that you're working on that all the time. The second gentleman was a captain at our local sheriff's office, and he was kind of in a lull. And I said, well, listen, let me walk you through two things real quick. You're overtraining at some point. He then became a captain and oversaw a different division, but he was overtraining completely and commander for the SWAT team. He was stuck on, I don't understand what they want me to do. I can't get where I need to go. And he missed a session or two. And I said, well, help me with this. When you're trying to train somebody to shoot and they're not very good at it, and you go over all the tap and rack and you get everything lined up and they're doing the right thing and now they can shoot, and they stop for 4 years to come back to you, are they as good as when you left them? Well, not at all. If you don't put it in practice, if you come and you go to our sessions and you just listen, you're probably going to take a golden nugget or two and you'll do okay. But if you do the homework and you go through every page that we have, and you just like you tell your guys during training, the more you put into it, the more you'll get out. Christ is the same way. The more you try to love him and get to know him better, and you're down on your face seeking his face and trying to be there with him and worship while you learn, now you're able to pour out to other people. He and another guy that was with us, when he left and went and became a captain, the lieutenant who took his space at the training center, we're both in the class and you and I were teaching it. And so we would meet every other month and talk. When we met outside and started talking, um, they were both like, well, I think we're going to literally take law enforcement guys in our area and do a Bible study, bring them to the table and start walking through maybe some of the stuff in the master's program, maybe the book of James, maybe whatever our class is going to be. And they started that the last couple months of the master's program and they graduated. And then now it's been 2.5, almost 3 years since they've graduated. And I still see them every Wednesday morning at our local eatery on Long Street cafe. And they're having their Bible study with 4, 5, 6, 10 guys over in the corner. And it's going strong and still going. And you ought to see them pouring into them. Now, the one I'm speaking of is the only one doing it. The other guy has moved on. Um, but it's watching them take the information, turn into what it looks like in real life, and then carry it on past the class. And it's a living testimony of what Christ is doing in his life and those other officers. It's awesome to see them pray at the table, and you got all these kids sitting around watching it. It's it's very inspiring that Christ is alive and well and killing things here in Gainesville.
That's awesome. Hey, Marcus, I want to just call out something here. Maybe you're thinking it too. Is that can you believe that you and I are doing this? I mean, at the end of the day, I never saw myself uh, doing this kind of thing with men. And maybe we both thought maximum someday I may get on stage and do announcements at church, maximum. Or maximum, I'll give my testimony in front of church someday. I don't know, just like this that we get to do was not either on my bingo card or in the playbook, except God called us into this. Do you ever find it strange just thinking about the opportunities that God's placed in front of you being in this role?
Absolutely, and it makes perfect sense, and as I walk through and try to look at my life and how it was on track, and then now the turn that it took, the interruption, the pivot point that the master program became for me, um, really kind of opened my eyes, and I can't think of the name 'cause I'm bad at names, but when we looked at, the gentleman who came and told us about your yes needs to be yes, and he wouldn't go speak in at the location for a birthday party, or somebody was trying to pay him a lot to go do this conversation. He said, "You've gotta know what your yes is and be ready and prepared to do it. You don't wanna go too thin. You need to stay focused on what you're good at." Um, God has opened doors for me like crazy since I've gone through the master's program. Just like you mentioned, I've always taught small group or Sunday school, whatever they call it, at different institutions. And before I went overseas and worked, while I was there, I tried a couple times, didn't work so good. And then back here. Um, so I've been doing that forever, but never did I think about church leadership. And part of what we talked about during the master's program is the skills that we have and the game plan that God has us in, take those skills and use them for his church, use them for his body of believers, whether it's inside the four walls or outside and you're doing a small group somewhere else. And so now I went from being an usher in a small group to heading up the ushers. Okay, there's not a lot to that, but still. And then he brought me into being an elder at the church, trying to help with the direction. And I now meet with my pastor and try to walk through, accountability and how are you doing? How's your spiritual walk? How's, you and your wife? And that comes from some specific things that's happened in my life in church in the past. Um, I'm super little side bar real quick.
Yeah.
Growing up and going to a marriage retreat and listening to the pastor talk to just the men for a little while, he talked about adultery and how to stay focused on making sure that that doesn't happen in your life. And, he said, how many of you, because you're a Christian and because you think it's honorable and it's the right thing to do, that you'll never cheat? And I raised my hand. He goes, well, you're a fool. And if you don't have a battle plan and a game plan, you got to be very wary. So walking through what he was saying, I put together that battle plan. And I say all that just to say I'm super big and hyped on that when I talk to other men and talking to them and talking kind of Christ into our life is stay focused and never think you got it licked because the devil is after every marriage. He's after every pastor. He's after everything that serves his kingdom. And if you're doing nothing and nothing's going wrong, doesn't have to do anything because he's got you where he wants you. You're not really serving anyway. You're complacent, you're lukewarm. And then everyone has to look at their salvation and see where it's at, but that's another whole nother story. We won't go down the track right now. Uh, but yeah, it is amazing to see where he has taken me. I want to say Virgin Atlantic was the founder, and he's the one that had a session or a portion of our master's program where it just walked through. You've got to be uh, planned up ahead of time what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. So I have in the back of my head when somebody asks me to do something to serve, Vacation Bible School, we just got done with, whatever it is, I'm going to say yes, unless it's going to take away from what God already has me doing. And usually it doesn't. There's always some room. Let's do this. Let's do that. Um, and here I am now with the master's program and going through the scholarship portion and working through, and I get the opportunity, thank goodness, based on what you and I worked on to be able to help and coach and mentor and walk some men through how can Christ do so much more in your life? And now you allowing him in, you're going to blossom and be able to serve him in so many more ways. And they're taking opportunities. I get to watch them do that in my local community as well as across the nation. My first class, uh, George Floyd incident happened in Minneapolis. We had an officer from that area. So we got to hear live updates, what was happening and how they were getting tormented. It really inspired the rest of the officers to think, we don't have it so bad. Let's keep praying for him. And if we stay focused on this God thing, maybe we can overcome everything that's happening in our country right now. So it was a good time for them in Christ.
Yeah, Marcus, this isn't the only thing you're involved in. You should talk, if you wouldn't mind, a little bit about the other ministry that you get to take police officers away and pour into them and their wives. Say a little bit about that, would you?
Absolutely. Um, there's a ministry when, and going back to Phil Brown for a minute. First of all, let me touch on one other thing about Phil Brown. My father passed away at 15. And when he came into my life, Phil Brown did here at Gainesville, we started connecting and doing a lot of stuff together and talking all the time. He basically became almost like a second dad for me. It was really nice to have him around and kind of a mentor who was very seasoned and alive and full of Christ and serving him. It really helped me grow and look at what life could be at 60, 70, 80, like he did. With that, when we started thinking about, and remind me again where we were going because I put that plug in.
Yeah, I want to hear about your other ministry that you're
That's right.
doing, the
So
retreats.
Phil left and thought to himself, "What else can I do? I want to do something different." And he thought of this ministry called Blazing New Trails. Him and I started putting our minds together. What could it look like? He tried to get me really involved at the beginning, but as you know, I have the master's program and a full-time job in Atlanta. So I helped him as much as I could, but he really took it by the horns and started this ministry called Blazing New Trails. And it basically takes law enforcement officers who are having a hard time, possibly PTSD or trauma, something occurred in their lives, whether an event with losing a partner, or we have officers who have done CPR on children and lost them, or a drowning victim, whatever that looks like in their life. It's influenced them in enough to where they're not handling life right, things aren't going right, their marriage is very affected. That happens a lot in law enforcement and military, as well as outside of those two professions. But we offer the opportunity for couples to come and have a marriage retreat with a licensed psychologist who is a graduate from the master's program, and he does the teaching portion. Here's what communication looks like. Here's how our brains operate. Here's the pink and blue way of looking at things. I'm saying, I love you very much. And she's hearing, you're okay. So it depends on how you present things, your tone, all that. He teaches all that stuff. Then we have breakout groups, and the breakout groups are when we separate the men and women. They go with different, like at the beginning, it was a small group of 8 to 10 couples. So we'd have 8 to 10 guys, 8 to 10 girls, and they would go with Brian Seats, who is a graduate now of the master's program as well. And he is the new director after Phil passed away last year in May. Brian takes a group, Linda, his wife, who has written several books about counseling and how to be a spouse of a law enforcement officer. Here's what it looks like. Here's what Christ says about it. Here's how you can live for Christ and bring everything is faith based in this program. We don't push that in the advertising, although lately we have, and it's had great fruit, and we're bringing people in left and right. We've expanded from 8 to 10 couples to almost 20 to 30, depending on the time of year and how many we can get in there. And it takes those people during the breakout sessions and works through what their trauma was. What does it look like? How can we help you? What does Christ say about that? And we try to hook them into local churches if they like that. And then the last day in the culmination is a salvation message and resources for podcast, and give them a Bible and hook them up with a church if they need to, and then follow-up sessions with therapy if they need it. Um, it's been wildly successful, and it is on fire for Christ. The last 2 sessions we have 2 in the, first half of the year, usually in early spring, late spring, and then 2 at the end of the year, in fall into winter. And the last 2 sessions, 6 people gave their life to Christ on Sunday on the last day, and the prior one in March, 12 people gave their life to Christ at the
That's
end.
awesome.
It's just and that's the unexpected portion that developed after the first 1, 2, 3, 4 different retreats that we had, because now we've had 15 retreats. Over 120 couples have come and gone.
Wow.
And so I get to help with the breakout sessions and coach the guys and work with them and talk to them. And then I get to present the master's program and walk through what that looks like. Our last class had 14 people in it. We graduated 11 at the end. We're working with the other 3 if they're going to come back later or not. But 5 of those 11 who graduated were from the master's program. So they were already supervisors. They were strong Christians, but having troubles in their marriage or their life. We worked through that with them. And as a result, they end up in the master's program. And now they're doing great things and serving Christ in different ways and taking that back to their departments.
Marcus, I want to shift gears with you and talk to you a little bit about the policing world because a lot of us only hear things through the news, maybe social media, etc. And you really have a heartbeat for what's going on in the policing world. What is the sense of things right now? What is the police chief, the people that are in leadership and law enforcement? How are they seeing the world? How are they experiencing things that are happening in our communities? Give us a sense of their life that we could look through their eyes and how they're seeing the world right now.
Absolutely. As I work in Atlanta Police Department officers, my friends are here in North Georgia area, and then we get to connect with people across the country and talk to them. So let me start with, there's a very different perspective depending on where you're at. It's very different policing in California compared to Atlanta or Georgia or the Southeast. And right now, like for instance, during the George Floyd and the defund movement, it was very depressing. We had to really pump up the guys who worked in California and tell them how much we admire them, love them. They are treasures for our country, and without them doing what they're doing for the community, everyone suffers. So please keep doing what you're doing and don't get depressed. Here in Georgia, we always have support. People are always coming up and saying thank you. People are always coming up, and not everybody by a long shot, but a vast big part of the community. And I don't want to oversell that. And they would come up and put banners at their house, much less their business. You know, we back the blue, we support you, and they bring treats to the sheriff's office or the police department and gift cards, trying to help out officers. It is from a Christian viewpoint and looking at law enforcement is a dark world. We all know that it's going to get much worse in the future, and things are going to go wrong, and things are going to go sideways. Law enforcement is that balancing act here in our country to not allow it get too bad, not allow it to hurt as many people. Um, I worked narcotics for about 12 years, and I was always one who went to the Rotary Club or Kiwanis or Lions Club and talked about drugs in our community. And I remember distinctly a lady asking me one time, so walk me through the drugs in our area. I didn't know we had this. I didn't know we had that. Are we winning the war on drugs? Well, at the time, which is probably true now, I said, we are definitely not winning the war on drugs, but we are slowing it down from growing as fast as it could. Now that's changed a lot now. I think that nationally they're getting a handle on it and it's headed in the right direction. But I think that law enforcement is that way a lot. There's a lot of bad people out there doing bad things, a lot of good people who make mistakes. There's always an opportunity for Christ to show up in a law enforcement officer's life and spread that why he's doing what he's doing. It doesn't mean he has to be soft by any means. It doesn't mean he can't do his job and do it properly. I picture Christians as lions as much as I do lambs, and they are leaders, they are shepherds, they are taking care of their flock, and that flock starts with their wife and kids, and then it goes to their community and a strong brotherhood of people who don't influence you in the wrong way, but you influencing them in the right way. You're around that water cooler, not laughing at the bad jokes and, "Hey, why don't you, and what do you have?" And, "I see you and your wife, and I know you guys go to church. Why do you have that?"
So, Marcus, uh, what we're seeing then is the ability to impact a community through law enforcement. And let me just make sure that you hear this. I am thankful for you. I am thankful for all law enforcement. We are so grateful for that in our communities. It's a way with which we have order, peace, and the ability to have the American life we're hoping for. And so we're super grateful for the service that you all provide. I want to I just give you one more sort of open opportunity here. um, if you were to explain to law enforcement officer to help them have a bigger vision for how they can bring Christ into what they do, in what ways would you encourage them to think bigger than, hey, Monday through Friday or whatever my shift schedule is, I am an officer, and then when I'm off duty, I'm a Christ follower. How would you cast a vision for them for where is it possible to be a Christ follower while you're on duty? How does that show up practically? What ways can they be thinking about showing and following Christ while they're on duty?
Absolutely, that's actually a really good question, and for many officers, especially if they're older when they convert, it is hard to do. It is really hard to bring that to bear. Um, Kinda like in teaching, you're not supposed to talk about Jesus and Christianity. Um, Most school boards won't let you. Law enforcement is kind of different because you do have the opportunity, but again, it's gonna depend on where you're at. It's much more acceptable where I am compared to California, and I that's the easiest thing for me to use because that's where all of our retreats are, and probably 70% of the officers who come are from California. So I get to hear a lot about their law enforcement experience, and it is different because of the environment and the communities. But taking Christ and literally living those virtues and characteristics that Christ wants you to have, um, in your everyday life shines like crazy in the law enforcement community. I say the same thing for military. I had one of my best friends overseas. I worked in Baghdad for about 10 years in Baghdad, Iraq. And one of my best friends was an airborne guy. We worked closely together. And he replaced the word the, with fu. And he said it all the time. He just could
Hmm.
not stop from saying it. He would also say GD a little bit, and I'd cringe, and he knew I was a Christian. We talked about Christ all the time, and he stopped saying GD altogether, and he apologized for not being able to stop the other one. I said, "Hey, brother, that's okay. You be you. We'll keep doing what we're doing, and we'll keep talking." But it makes a difference, and people see that you don't cuss. People see that you don't get drunk and go out in community and do stupid things. They see that you're loving on your wife and treating her the right way. They see that, I remember distinctly, in my narcotics unit, I loved my guys. We were strong brotherhood of people, have each other's back all the time, but they had barbecues and went out all the time and they drank a lot. I would always say, "No, I appreciate it. No, I appreciate it." I didn't want my kids around it, other things. I could go myself. It's not going to be a problem. I won't do it. It won't influence me, but I can't have my kids and my wife and go to a function like that. Well, after about 2 years, they stopped inviting us. "Hey, guys, don't stop inviting me. It feels good to be invited. Now I feel left out." So they'd invite me, but I'd always say no. But it's trying to be that good influence, and good is a perspective, but when it comes to Christ, there's absolutely characteristics that matter. And, I remember every once in a while, when everything went the right direction during an arrest, I might talk to people about Christ. Do you know who he is? And share the gospel when we're on the way to jail or when I have an interview with them. Um, Again, kind of like everyone else, it's not preacher on the street corner with a Bible preaching to everybody who walks by. It's God opening doors and allowing you to share the gospel in a meaningful way where they might accept it. And sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't, but it's taking those characteristics and living them every day that matters. It's kind of like going to the gym. If you go to the gym for 2 months and then stop for 2 months and go to the gym for 2 months and stop for 2 months, consistency is the key. And again, going back to Phil, I knew him for about 5.5, 6 years. He was always consistent, always serving Christ and not having a slip here, a slip here, a slip here. It's impossible to be perfect, but to be consistent is relatively easy.
Hmm.
Have to stay focused and disciplined. The master's program absolutely helped me do that. It helped me know what was right and wrong and indifferent, more so than what I had in my background. And then it helped me put the tools and processes in place to create that margin, to get rid of stuff I didn't need to do.
Marcus, I want to wrap here with a quick prayer. For those of you who are listening to this, I want to ask you to pray for the city and the county that you live in, that you would pray for law enforcement in that place, that those who know Jesus that are involved in those organizations will have the ability to continue to share him, that you pray protection on them, and that you would pray for our communities to find right relationship with Christ again. So let's pray together. I want to pray for you, Marcus, and pray for all. And I'm going to ask those of you listening to pray with your family for your local police department. God, thank you that you gave us law and order. God, you didn't leave us to chaos, that you gave your law through Moses, and that over time, as we have studied your word, we've seen how good it is for families to flourish, for children to be protected. And that comes through the ongoing following of the law. Thank you for our judges. I pray your blessing here in Collin County, where I live, and the police department that's here, that you would continue to help our police chief and all of them to continue to flourish, be protected, and do the right thing, and that Jesus, you'd shine in our communities with them being a part of that. Lord, thank you for the way that you've worked in the men that came before us, Bob Shank, Phil Brown, and so many that have poured into our lives that have allowed us to continue to build the lives that we have now because we want to be a part of your story. So we honor you, Jesus, and pray for a revival in the United States. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Marcus, thank you so much for being on the show with me here today. You're a blessing and a real dear friend. God bless you, buddy.
God bless you. Thank you.
Thanks for spending some time with us here on Leveraging Success with Jeff Gerhardt, brought to you by Priority Living's The Masters Program. If today's conversation stirred something in you, share it with a leader who needs it. And follow the show so you never miss an episode. Until next time, keep leveraging your success for what matters forever.